morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you might be listening to this. My name is Sutton Def, and you are listening to Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Yes, a YouTube channel where we cover all things Baltimore Ravens daily, 365 days a year. So if that's right up your alley, please consider liking this video and also clicking that subscribe button as well if you are new. Listen, I have a very special guest waiting backstage. Before I run the intro and I bring the guests on and things like that, just want to let you guys know what we're talking about today. The Ravens have one more big move in their back pocket. Okay, that's what I want to talk about here. Free agency, of course, the initial wave of it is long gone. It's over. The draft is over. The dust is kind of settling. But I think that the Ravens have the capacity to make one more big move that could potentially complete this Ravens roster. Let me know down below in the comments who you think that is. Also, be sure to like the video. Again, Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Let's get started. Yes, sir. So, like I said, we are back with another episode of Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Again, I'm your host, Sutton Def, and today we've got a lot to talk about with these Baltimore Ravens here. But before we start any of that, we do have a very special guest backstage here. This is a guest, a friend of the show who hasn't been on for quite some time now, so I'm very excited to get his takes on our Baltimore Ravens tonight. Without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring up my guy, Keeping It Real on the stage. Shout out to you, man. Clap it up for him. My guy, Keeping It Real, KIR, is here in the house, joining the Rain Gang family once again for the first time in a long time. It's been about 5 years. We were just talking before we went live here. It's been about 4 or 5 years since you've come on. Like, you were literally probably one of the first guests we've had on the show, now that I'm thinking about it. That's crazy. I have to go back and look. You might have been the first one. I have to go back and check. Got to go back and check. But it was a long time ago. Something like that. You were definitely top three, first three. But shout out to you for coming through, man. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's a new era of football in Baltimore, and I'm so excited. It's a breath of fresh air. New hope has been dropped to the franchise, and there's just so much that can be done. But the best part is there's a whole lot of optimism in terms of what can be done and what they can do to put themselves in position towards winning a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it definitely looks, actually, now that you mention that, and I guess we can just kind of dive right into it. Again, shout out to everybody who's here watching live right now. We are live on YouTube. We're also live on X. Shout out to everyone watching live. Please be sure to like this video. Also subscribe to the channel as well. And by the way, all super chats, donations, gifts, memberships, new subscribers, things like that. We all display that on the channel up here right above where my head is at here. And then you will pop up on the screen. We got to give our love to everybody who supports the channel here at the Purple Rain Podcast. But first, Keeping It Real, I want to ask you this, because you mentioned how the Ravens are basically in prime position to hit that refresh button and kind of turn a new leaf here and start something, become a second coming of a contender, with the Lamar Jackson era. I want to ask you this. Do you think that the 2026 Ravens, is it a no more excuses year? Is it like a Super Bowl or bust kind of year for this Ravens team, despite getting a new head coach and things like that? The thing is, we're not in a rebuilding phase. We just kind of retooled a little bit, and we're supposed to be right back there in the driver's seat to be contenders, like I was saying. So do you think that this is like a no more excuses, Super Bowl or bust kind of year for the Ravens?
Well, this is very tough because when you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, one of the best in the game, and you have Derrick Henry, who's still playing like one of the best running backs in the game. In fact, if he's not one, he's two. When you got those two right next to each other and a team that's consistently been competitive and gotten to the playoffs and won, divisional titles, and in some cases have come somewhat far, the expectation is that you still are a Super Bowl or bust team because you've got that type of quarterback there. And I believe that is going to be a label that is going to stick with this team as long as Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. So the expectations are always going to be placed on this team coming into every year. And the goal is always going to be a Super Bowl. But when you have a quarterback like Lamar, who is a historical quarterback, there's always going to be a Super Bowl or bust title placed on this team. So I would definitely say yes. In terms of the title, but for the fan base, I feel like this has to be a year where we have to truly assess what's happening here. And what I mean by that is we need to see if this team has really changed because we've had dominant seasons. It's very hard to assess this era of Ravens football because we've had the 13-win season, we've had a 14-win season, we've had multiple 12-win seasons, we've won multiple division titles. We were literally a title loop kick away from winning three straight divisional titles and making the playoffs. So we already know that this team can be dominant in the regular season. We already know that this team can win the division. We already know this team can get the number one seed. We've gotten the number one seed twice in a conference with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, as well as Joe Burrow. So we know what this team is capable of, but it's about how they look. And what I mean by that is, in terms of games they're winning, how are they performing? How are they looking as a team? But most importantly, and this is something I don't know if it's just me, but I'm interested in seeing how you feel about this. I'm interested in seeing how this team looks when it comes to losses. Now, of course, I don't expect us to have a lot of losses, but one thing we have definitely talked about for years now is when it comes to the losses for the Ravens, we've always looked undisciplined and it's always been self-inflicted wounds. It's
Mhm.
football. You're never going to be able to go undefeated. That's just how it is. But there are games where you can leave that game and have some sort of takeaway where it's like it was a battle between two of the best teams in the league. It came down to the wire. The ball just went in the court of the opponent, last second drive, game winning field goal. But you look at this and leave with the mindset of these are the two best teams in the league. You were right there with them head to head. You played the game the right way. It just wasn't your chance. At the end of the day, you move on from that loss, but you look at that and say, this team has the capability of winning a championship. And a loss like this shows they can compete with the best. When we've looked at how the Ravens have lost the last few years, what has it been?
Mhm.
Constant blown choky performances, blowing 10-point leads, blowing 15-point leads, a game that you're expected to win. When you're up 15 with 4 minutes left to go, you should win that game. When you've
Yep.
got a 1-point lead in the fourth quarter, you should win this game.
Yep.
Yet we've walked away from a lot of these games with losses. So one thing I'm looking forward to seeing is how Jesse Minter has this team looking in losses. Not to say I want to see a lot of those, but I want to see how this team performs when they're going up against the best. When you're going up against Kansas City at their best, when you're going up against Buffalo, when you're going up against Seattle, when you're going up against LA, if they're on your schedule, of course. When you're going up against the best teams, how are you faring against them? If you're going to dominate, dominate. But there should be no point where you're dominating for three quarters and then the last quarter you forget how to play football. So, yes, I will absolutely say this is a Super Bowl or bust title that's going to be placed on them. But as fans of this team, we have to really assess how they're playing. Do they look disciplined? Are they doing the right things? And when it comes to losses, how does he have this team looking? And how does he have them bouncing back from losses? That will tell us the difference between those previous teams we've seen and the team Jesse Minter's trying to build.
Yeah, and that's an interesting way to put it. I actually hadn't thought about it like that. It was kind of like been in the back of my head. Admittedly, as a diehard Baltimore Ravens fan in mid-May, right? I'm going to be thinking, especially after the draft we had, I'm hyped about our draft. And I want to get to that as well and see how you felt about some of those guys. I'm hyped about some of the other offseason acquisitions we had. I'm hyped about this new coaching staff. So if you ask me in mid-May as a Ravens fan with my purple shades on, I'm thinking we'll win every game, right? I'm thinking we'll run the table. But obviously, that's not realistic. Like you said, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And again, like you make a really good point when you say like it's going to be interesting to see how the Ravens lose because, like you said, it was a lot of blown leads and things like that. But what else does that look like? Does it look like down the stretch of games a lot of like missed tackling and kind of like labored movement and guys don't look conditioned? Because we had seen that before too. I mean, we had seen that in the early stages of Lamar Jackson's career. There were a couple of games. I remember that fierce rivalry the Ravens had with the Titans from what 2019 to about 2022, I would say, somewhere
Yeah.
in that ballpark time frame. A lot of times against Derrick Henry, we would gas out and we couldn't
Yep.
tackle him down the stretch of those games. So conditioning and things like that, it'll be interesting to see how Jesse Minter has this team coming prepared on game days because I don't know if you heard, keeping it real, but Zay Flowers had just revealed a
Mhm.
couple of weeks ago how, he was in ice baths 3 hours before the games, because Harbaugh had them boys out there conditioning and basically run until they puke. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it'll be interesting, like you said, to see how this team responds to adversity, quite frankly, as well, because just how we feel like I said, with the purple shades on, things like that the Ravens have one of the best rosters in the league. There's a lot of fan bases around, the NFL right now who feel similar, right? And it's not
Yep.
even just the teams that we expect to be in the dance when it's all said and done, but it's lower level teams. I mean, even teams that we're rubbing shoulders with, like the Cincinnati Bengals. All I see in the media, right, is how. And I hate to go off on a little tangent here, but all I see in the media with like the Cincinnati Bengals, they're the media darlings right now. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know, I don't know if you've heard, but like it's like, oh, they've got Dexter Lawrence and they've got Boy Mafe now, and they got Cassius Howell in the draft. They're going to be great. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals, all they needed was a little bit of defense. The offense is already top tier. They're going to win the division. I can't tell you how many times I've seen in the national media in the last 2 weeks, basically post draft, that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win this division. I'm not saying that to say that I think that that's impossible. I'm saying that to say this Ravens team, while we all think they're going to be great, they're going to be up against some stiff competition because there are 31 other teams out there with rosters of 53 men apiece who they all get paid too. And they're all top 1% in the world as well. So it's going to be tough sledding. And I really want to see what Jesse Minter has with the psychology of the team. But I'll toss you this, though. It was funny because Zay Flowers also said Zay Flowers been talking a lot lately, by the way. I don't know if
Oh,
you
for
noticed, but
sure.
he's been talking a bunch. But he said that he talked about Jesse Minter. He said that they're fired up to play for him. He's kind of like he's fierce, but he's calm at the same time. And I think that like those two character traits really, really bode well for a football team who is naturally, like we're mentioning here, is going to have its ups and downs. There's going to be ebbs and flows in the season. So if he can kind of reel the guys in with that calm demeanor of his, and you've seen it in interviews and things like that, when he speaks,
Yep.
he's not too much of a rah rah guy. You can tell he can reel a team in when need be, but he's also very detail oriented and things like that. So, and you've got other guys on not the roster, but the coaching staff who are going to be able to fire the team up. Tony Weaver is a guy who comes to mind for me, and a couple of the assistant coaches, Mike Mickens, a couple of guys on the assistant coaches as well. But no, man, I mean, it's going to be interesting. And like I said, I wanted to toss to you, like, I mean, what do you think about? I mean, you have Jesse Minter in the background of you right now. Jesse Minter, like, was he your guy, like, going into this head coaching search, and really, like, what do you expect him to bring this Ravens team before we move on here?
That is a great question. And yes, that was absolutely on purpose, the background for Jesse Minter. It's a new era. Felt I had to rep the right way. But
Yeah,
yeah, in terms of Jesse Minter, he was obviously one of my two choices. I had either Jesse Minter or Clint Kubiak, one of the two. I was leaning more towards Jesse Minter. I know a lot of people wanted more Clint Kubiak because we wanted to
yeah,
get an offensive minded head coach for Lamar Jackson, which would have been fantastic because having that offensive mind with Lamar and knowing that you lose an offensive coordinator, you don't got to worry about that. You can move forward. That would have been great. But I was leaning more towards Jesse Minter because I was watching what he was doing with the Chargers defense. I was seeing how he was able to maximize the level of talent, even though you got guys that are like fifth round, sixth round guys on that defense, and he's
yeah.
getting the very best out of them. And I'm watching a Chargers defense that frankly has no business being top 10 in both years. That was Brandon Staley's defense. That was a bottom three defense that he came and turned into a top five unit in both years he's there. I watched him do that. And then I started to wonder, with the level of talent we have, what could this guy do with that
Mm,
defense? And that's what swayed me. Another thing that swayed me, watching his defense in the playoffs, his defense was able to create turnovers in both playoff games they played against the Texans, against the Patriots. That defense was able to create turnovers. That defense was able to make stops. That defense was able to give their quarterbacks opportunities to be able to score in great field position. When you take a look at the Ravens, especially these last 8 years in this Lamar Jackson era, Baltimore's defense has created two turnovers in the Lamar Jackson era. One
insane.
one, of course, is the famous Marcus Peters interception, and the
Yeah.
other was a fumble that Kyle Hamilton had in the game against the Bengals, a game Lamar didn't even play in. That was Tyler Huntley.
Yep.
to make things worse, because I've talked about this towards the end of I was talking about this all throughout the season, towards the end of the Harbaugh era, and talking about how Zach Orr this defense has looked poor and how the defense as a whole in the playoffs has not completely lived up to standards. From 2008 to 2012, the 5-year stint where we had that Hall of Fame defense, that
Hmm.
defense generated 43 turnovers in the playoffs.
Oof.
That is what
The
made
good
us the most
days.
dangerous team. The good old days. That right there wins your playoff games. Even when your quarterback isn't playing his best, even when your offense is dealing with a tough defense, when you've got a defense of your own that can generate turnovers and put you in the position to win, that's what helps you get to the Super Bowl. And what emphasized that to me even more was watching this playoffs, where I'm watching a Drake May turn the ball over multiple times in every game he played
And
and
still win.
somehow get to
Mm,
the Super Bowl.
talk about it. Gosh,
That's
man.
what made me believe Jesse Minter is the guy for us. A guy that's
Yeah.
able, his defense can generate turnovers in the playoffs. His defense gives his quarterbacks great position. Another thing to emphasize in the Lamar Jackson era, we have never once started an opponent's field position in the playoffs.
Nope. Yep. That's true. That's a fact. Say it
These
again.
are
Say it
things,
again.
yep,
One more time.
I will say it again. In the Lamar Jackson era, we have never once started an opponent's field position. These are things that change the aspects of a game. It can tip the entire momentum of a game. If an offense is struggling, your defense gets a turnover, next thing you know, you're in field goal range. That changes the momentum of a game. So these two aspects with the turnovers, being able to put your offense in great field position, being able to make key stops, all of these, watching Jesse Minter's defense and seeing how the playoffs went, especially with Mike McDonald now winning a championship with his defense doing exactly that and setting up Sam Darnold in that position, we now know
Yeah.
that formula can work. So that's what made me lean more towards Jesse Minter.
Yeah, I mean, all fabulous points there. And I forgot about that stat where you said like the Ravens literally in the Lamar Jackson era have never, in a playoff game that is, have never started a drive in opponent's territory. That's absolutely insane. Turnovers are imperative, man. You have to be able to flip the field. You give Lamar Jackson a short field, he will give you a championship. Point blank, period. That's how it goes. And kind of rewinding a bit to the beginning of your take, I think it always made sense to hire Jesse Minter, despite what I might have said in past pods where I was like, the idea of Clint Kubiak maybe it doesn't sound too bad, and maybe some other guys as well, LaFleur and all those other guys. But it always made sense in hindsight, as we all know, is 2020. But it always made sense to get a defensive-minded head coach who, like you mentioned, can do more with less, right? Because what does that allow us to do? That allows us to spend less money on the defense and load up on the offense in terms of cap
Yeah.
space. We're going to have to do that anyway with Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, right? There's other guys coming down the pipeline as well. But yeah, it's time to start getting cheaper on defense. There's two players in particular that are super expensive on the Ravens defense right now that are kind of like the catalyst of the situation and what causes that me to have this philosophy, right? Because there's just too much money tied up, dead money, and I'm not even talking like dead cap, but just literally like dead money that's not producing for us on the level we need to on the defense. So yeah, it's time to start shifting over some of the cap allocation to offense because right now it's a little bit more lopsided than I would personally care for. But we got to move along here. Keeping it real, I want to get into the draft before we start talking about this one big move that the Ravens can make. Make sure you stick around for that, by the way, because that's going to be a very, very interesting segment here on the show. Again, I'm joined by Keeping It Real here on the Quiet Storm Sports Podcast on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. But I want to ask you about the draft. I haven't gotten your takes on the draft. The Ravens made 11 selections. They got some UDFAs as well to boot. And I want to ask you, what is your favorite draft pick from this past draft class? Why and how do you think that they impact this team and make them basically, how do you think that this draft helps the Ravens in January? Because that's what we're all talking about here. You mentioned it to start the show. Like we all know that the Ravens can dominate regular season, all that. Which draft pick is your favorite and how do they help us in January?
This is a really good question because it really ties back to what we were just talking about in terms of getting a head coach that allows you to be able to spend more on the offense. Taking a look at this draft, 7 of the 11 draft picks were offensive players. They heavily invested on getting offensive players. 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, a running back, a center, and a guard. They spent 7 of 11 draft picks on offensive players. I don't remember the last time they've done this. A lot of times
Mm.
it's defensive players, a good mix of defense, offense, and some special teams players, but I really don't remember the last time I've seen them heavily invest in offense like this. In terms of my favorite draft pick, man, I was pounding the table for the last 2 months about Venga Yowane. I 100% said that has to be the pick, especially getting Jesse into that mindset of investing in the offense, investing in the quarterback. You need to protect Lamar Jackson. We had one of the worst offensive lines in football, and watching Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees together on that line, I don't know how Lamar was able to finish the season healthy. Everything was such a mess. And the more I go back and look at that 2025 Ravens, the more I sit back and question how were they even in a situation where they could have been a title loop kick away from making the playoffs and winning the division with the way they
Yeah.
played. How?
Yeah, I don't know how they kept getting away with it. And I'm talking about the coaching staff. Like, obviously they cleared house at the end of the season, but you got to think during the season, do you remember all the gaslighting that was being done? Do you
Oh,
remember for
I remember.
George Warhop and John Harbaugh getting in front of the media and basically telling us like, no, the O line is it's fine. What are you guys talking about? Literally, you guys are into the bar, fans at home. You know nothing about football. The
Mhm.
guards are fine. The offensive line is perfectly fine. That's what we were told. All for that kind of fairy tale house that they were living in to come crashing down at the end of the season when Steve Bisciotti, of course, Ravens owner, literally said on the mic that offensive line did not improve, right? If
Mhm.
if 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 63, 64-year-old Steve Bisciotti, who I don't know how closely he watches the games and things like that, but like if he has the consensus like idea in his head that yeah, the main ailment of the team was the O line. It really, really puts egg on the face of John Harbaugh and the entire, not even the entire coaching staff, but like just everybody who kind of backed the decision to keep that offensive line in the rotation we had. Because, like you mentioned, man, it's a shame that Lamar Jackson had to deal with that. I posted something on Twitter earlier today saying that like the Ravens guards, right? The Ravens guards, they were 27th. They ranked 27th out of 32 teams in the league in
Yep.
terms of cumulative run blocking efficiency, right? And basically, Derrick Henry still ran for 1,600 yards and finished second in the league in rushing yards, only like 20 something yards behind James Cook last year. So it's
Mhm.
amazing what Derrick Henry was able to do behind that shoddy offensive line. But like you mentioned, getting a Venga Yowane on that line. And here's the thing I want to ask you this because I talked about this a little bit yesterday on the show, but I want to get your take just really quick. Do you think Venga should play left guard or right guard?
Um, I would say, obviously because you got Simpson and you kind of paid him that contract. It feels like they're definitely going to look to give him a chance. And then you, of course, got Emory Jones as well, and you
Right.
got a whole aspect of how that's going to work. I think when it comes to Venga, I personally would want him to be on that right side. Actually, no, I think I want him to be more on that left side. I think I was seeing a couple things in terms of Derrick Henry's run options in terms of where he's going. When he runs on that left side, he's highly effective. And I feel like putting Venga right there would be the best. But I think you could put him on either spot. My best answer for this question is I'm gonna let Dwayne Ledford make the decision of where he should put him because I trust this guy to put him in the right spot where we're going to be beneficial for the entire line. So if there's an aspect, which I guess we'll get into that, if there's an aspect of the offensive line that could be weakened depending on how things go, I feel like Ledford would put him on a good position to where he's going to be able to help this offensive line the best. Me personally, I feel like that could be right guard. I see opportunities for him at left guard because Derrick Henry likes to run to the left a lot. And again, having a huge guy like Venga right there on that left side, right next to Ronnie Stanley, I could just see a
Yeah.
lot of breakaway speed. So I feel like he could be on either side, but I'm really gonna leave that up to Dwayne Ledford. My answer is right guard. ultimately because I think this is really just replacing where Falele was, and that allows you to play Simpson or Emery Jones, whoever takes that spot. But I think Ledford has a good idea of where he's going to place him.
Mm. And see, I disagree when you mention right guard. I think that he should play left guard through and through 100% all the way. And the reason I think that is because number one, he played left guard in college, right? Let's just
True.
keep the continuity. Like, let's just keep him comfortable, right? He's a 14th overall pick. We don't want to play him out of position, right? We don't
That's
need this
true.
guy. We can't afford this guy to look like a fish out of water if he plays right guard, Not to say that he couldn't do it, but I just would rather him play to his strengths. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned Ronnie Stanley. I think putting him next to Ronnie Stanley and the fact that Derrick Henry likes to run left as well. I mean, having those two guys on the same side, I think will be a bit of like a force multiplication in the run game. Having two guys who can move bodies,
Yeah.
displace defensive linemen and things like that, especially on outside zone, which is something Dwayne Ledford loves to run. I think that with that being said, it would make sense to kind of stack it and you basically have a strong side that you would run to. Now, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that running off to the right with John Simpson and Rosengard wouldn't work because John Simpson, his strength is actually run blocking, right? And
Yeah.
he's a mean and nasty guard as well. So I don't think that it would be like a total, like, oh, you can't run to the right side now. We're totally imbalanced. No, I don't think that at all. I just think that having a stronger side, I think it changes the math a little bit too. And I talked
Mhm.
about this earlier this week. Like, I think that the defense, knowing that you have a stronger side that you want to run to, sets up counter a lot better, right? It sets up play action a lot better. And I think there's just a world of possibilities by putting him on that left side. Again, and not to mention he played left side in college. So I would want him to again, us to play to his strengths. By the way,
Yeah.
100 people watching live right now. Thank you guys so much for coming through to this episode of Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. We are joined today by Keeping It Real here, and we're going to keep it moving. We do want to get into the main topic of this episode. So basically, the Ravens may not be done just yet. And what I mean by that is, like I said at the top of the show, guys, the dust has settled from the initial wave of free agency, the initial wave of, of course, the draft happening and then UDFA signings, things like that is kind of cooled down. However, one might argue that the Ravens have a couple more spots of need, positions of need on this roster to really kind of like bring everything together. They're just maybe missing a couple different pieces, right? Some people argue, oh, center obviously is something that the Ravens need to address. Some people say, oh, the Ravens need to go get a vet wide receiver. Oh, the Ravens need to go get a vet edge rush, whatever, right? Um, I want to bring this up on screen here really quick, keeping it real. As you guys can see, what you see right here is the current cap space, team salary cap space for every team in the NFL. And if you notice here towards the bottom of this list, the Ravens they have the 14th most cap space available right now in the NFL. So they're in the top half of the league in available cap. And the exact number is 23,856,266. And this is updated as of today. So the Ravens are working with about 23, $24 million in cap space, which is more than enough, right? More than enough to make another big move that could potentially tie this roster together. So here's where I toss it to you, keeping it real. First, and everybody in the chat, in the comment section, replay game, you guys answer this question too. What are the top positions of need that the Ravens have left post free agency, initial wave of it, that is, post draft and things like that? And yeah, what position would you want to see the Ravens address now that all that's over?
Well, the first position, thankfully, was addressed. Perfect timing today. It's been official. Welcome back, Calais Campbell. That was an
Yeah.
aspect that I felt needed to be addressed, and they got that done. So, if I was to choose another spot, I would definitely say it would be great to go and get another veteran edge rusher to add to this front seven. I think at the end of the day, you've got some great quality pieces, young guys, and you've got a great veteran piece who's going to be your main guy in Trey Hendrickson. You're going to want to continue to develop guys like Mike Green. So I feel like getting a veteran edge rusher would definitely be a great decision to make just to add to the depth, but some guy that's definitely going to come in even as a rotational piece and give you some really, really quality snaps. Um, I think Joey Bosa obviously still being available potentially could be one as well. But I think another one that could definitely be on the radar, especially knowing how the Ravens love to bring guys back. Jadeveon Clowney could potentially come back. Don't know if that's going to be the case, but that is a guy that has said he would not mind coming back. So I do think that is one spot that would definitely benefit by getting another veteran edge rusher here, especially when you're trying to continue to build this front seven. You want to have depth pieces there for the most part. So I would definitely say one spot would be edge rusher. Another spot, obviously, would be center. That one we all know. Glasgow is definitely one that is going to be a topic of discussion. There's also been discussions about the Ravens potentially trading for a center, and that has
Yeah.
been brought up as well. So I think that's going to be the number one focus for the Ravens before anything else because they want to get a veteran center into this team just before training camp, kind of figure out how things are going to go there. So I would definitely say center is definitely another spot. And I got two more spots. I would say one is one that hasn't been talked about enough, and the other would be what we expect. Obviously, the one that is to be expected would be wide receiver. The Ravens in the past have always wanted to carry multiple veteran wide receivers. It's funny to talk about it now, but like Bateman technically counts as a veteran wide receiver. He's been in the league
Yeah.
since 2021, so he's technically a veteran receiver at this point. But I think, when you look at the receivers, Tyreek Hill is obviously going to be an interesting conversation, but I don't know where he is at this point in his recovery. And I'm of the mindset that there is a strong chance he goes back to Kansas City just because he knows that team, he knows that system, and that's probably where he best fits for what he wants to do, just getting to be
Well,
back with Mahomes. I
well,
think that may be a target.
really quick. I want to ask you this because you mentioned wide receiver as kind of like something that was kind of like your fourth option there. I mean, we'll get to center, we'll get to edge and all that in a minute here, but sticking on wide receiver for a hot second.
Mhm.
By the way, guys, like the video if you're watching live on YouTube. If you're watching on X, be sure to give me a follow. And my guy keeping it real because he is tagged in the post as well. Um, And real quick, we do have a super chat donation. This one's coming from Mad Rasta. Appreciate you, Mad Rasta, making it rain here on this episode of Quiet Storm Sports. Mad Rasta says Bateman for center and Doritos. See, now you're being disrespectful. See, we don't do this here on this channel, Mad Rasta, and you know that. Come on now. Be nice. Be nice to Bateman, man. I mean, one day y'all gonna see. Y'all gonna see one day. I promise you. I promise you. And I think it's gonna be this year too. Thank you so much,
Hopefully.
Mad Rasta. Appreciate you. Yeah, hopefully, right? But when it comes to the wide receiver room, are you satisfied with what the Ravens have right now? Like, would you feel comfortable going into this season knowing that the top pass catchers, again, you lost Isaiah Likely, right? He's gone. He's with the Giants now. So now you got Zay Flowers. You have dare I say, the ghost of Mark Andrews, not to be disrespectful, right? He was tied for the top in team touchdowns last year, receiving touchdowns, but he just doesn't look the same, right? A little bit of a shell of himself. You've got Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, obviously the new kids, and then you've got Tez Walker, and then a couple other guys underneath them, Xavier Guillory, list goes on and on. Do you feel
Yeah.
comfortable with that wide receiver room?
This is an interesting one. I've been kind of thinking about the wide receiver room for a while because my perspective's kind of changed overall, like pre-draft and post-draft. I still think I have the same answer of, yeah, I think we should definitely add another veteran receiver. I think that is definitely something they should look to target. But
Mm,
pre-draft, I expected them to, potentially go and get a receiver. What surprised me is when they double dipped for two receivers. So when they had initially gotten Jacoby Lane, that kind of fit my aspect because I wanted to draft saying I think there's going to be three spots they're going to want to address: the offensive line, defensive line, and they'll probably want to get a receiver. So I wasn't really surprised that they chose to get a receiver, but what surprised me is not long after getting Jacoby Lane, they draft Elijah Surratt. So they double dipped on wide receivers, and that made me start to think, what is Declan Doyle trying to cook up here? Because both of these guys, these are some really big receivers. What one
yeah.
who's I think what Lane 6'4" and Surratt 6'2"?
Yep.
Yeah. So like these are some these are big targets, and both of them really specialize in tough possession catches. This is what they do. One is more so of that aspect. The other is more of a red zone threat. Surratt's more of a red zone threat. He's a touchdown machine there. He was that
Yeah.
go-to guy for Mendoza last year.
By the
And
way,
with Jacoby Lane,
15 touchdowns in 14 games for Elijah Surratt last year. Literally averaged over a touchdown per game. Insane.
yep,
Go ahead though.
exactly. So you got one that again is just such a huge threat in the red zone, and then another who literally specializes in these tough 50-50 contested catches. So I started really thinking about what Doyle's looking to cook up here because these are two guys we haven't really had on our roster in quite some time. I've definitely heard, especially with Jacoby Lane, I've definitely heard the conversations and comparisons. I don't know if you have, but the comparisons between him and Miles Boykin coming out of college, there have been some brief
Mm.
talks about that. So that has brought concern because that was also supposed to be Boykin's specialty, but he never really utilized his physical traits when he was with us. And we're hopeful that Lane will do so this time around. So when we got those two receivers, I really was trying to think in terms of the mindset here because in years past, Ravens always would go try to get one, if not two veteran receivers, because they've never really been able to hit on that. But with this
Yeah.
being a new era, is it possible they choose to keep what they have and Doyle's really interested in developing guys with specific specialties? Because you got Zay Flowers that plays one type of way. You got Rashad Bateman that plays some type of way. Lane and Surratt, they play a different type of way. Is he trying to build with the young guys we have? Because this is a new coaching staff. Are they looking
Yeah.
to bring that veteran piece in?
Yeah, and I think so. I think that what I think is that they are desperately wanting to develop these new guys. Eric
Hmm.
DaCosta said something interesting on the Ravens Lounge podcast last week. He talked about drafting players and like what it's like draft night when you're in the war room, you give these kids a call, they're emotional, you got to keep it all together on the phone and stuff like that, and you know that, you're introducing them to a totally new life basically. And he talked about the emotions of it, and he kind of compared it to having children. He walked it
Hmm.
back a little bit and said that like it's not quite the same, but it's like along the same lines as that, is like you have something that is yours, like you chose this, you did the work, you put in the work on it, things like that. And I think that if coaches see it that way, and Declan Doyle and Jesse Minter in their first draft with the Ravens, they got this kid Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt. They want to hit on those guys because those are the first guys that they have brought in under their regime. They're kind of like
Yep.
their babies, right? So I think that with that being said, yeah, those guys are going to get kind of pushed, right? You're going to see early in training camp and preseason, they're going to be utilized probably a lot, right? And then by the time September comes around, at least one of these guys is going to be a pretty regular feature in this offense. So, I talked about yesterday on my show. I was like, I don't know if Tez Walker is cooked now because I mean, you've got Zay Flowers, who obviously is like everybody else is like the stepchildren, right? Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Tez Walker, they are the inherited stepchildren for Jesse Minter and Declan Doyle, right? Obviously, Zay Flowers is like the most impressive one. You got to give Zay Flowers his flowers, right? You got to let him do his
Hmm.
thing. He's still wide receiver one, things like that, yada yada yada. Bateman is another guy who was like, okay, what do you got here? A former first round pick you're giving me? All right. I mean, he's got all the tools. He's got some decent height. He's got some speed, some good hands. Route running's crisp. Cool. I think we can work with that. But we just brought in two new like what we look at as like Ferraris, and we got these for steals, right? And these are our guys now. This is what Declan Doyle and Jesse Minter are thinking. And then there's Tez Walker, and it's just kind of like, all right, so you got this I don't know, 2017, 2019 Honda, right? It's a nice car. Nice
Yeah.
car. It's been good to you a couple times, things like that, on a couple road trips, whatever. Um, but yeah, it's just not my baby. You know what I'm saying? Like I just kind of inherited this, right? So I think that with that being said, yeah, Lane and Surratt are definitely going to be pushed, and I think that Tez Walker might be a little bit cooked. And to address your veteran wide receiver point, uh, I don't I don't think that the Ravens will bring in a vet wide receiver this year. Of course, we've always seen it in years past. Like Eric
Yeah.
DeCosta really loves the idea of just bringing in, a vet guy, even if it is like last minute, a couple months before the season, whatever. He'll do that sort of thing. But now with Minter and Doyle, with them drafting two new wide receivers, with you having Zay Flowers, who's a veteran too. technically he's a vet too. And
Yep.
Rashad Bateman, it's like I think that they're gonna trust in those guys. So yeah, I don't know because what we're looking at right here on the screen, keeping it real, is the available free agents at wide receiver, and some people like my guy Nitro. By the way, I see my guy Coach in the chat. What up, Coach? Appreciate you for coming
What
through.
up, coach?
My guy Nitro, he is a really big proponent of bringing in Tyreek Hill. And me personally, I'm not a fan of that. I think that, and some people might disagree with this, but I think that his style and his the archetype of receiver he is kind of mirrors Zay Flowers a little bit too much. They're not quite the same, but they're
Yeah.
similar, right? And I think that you need people who are going to complement Zay Flowers and getting somebody who's basically his polar opposite. But are there any other names on this list here that you see? So you got Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Debo Samuel, Curtis Samuel, Juwan Jennings, which is a name that's been heating up recently. D Hop is another name who's still out there, right? Familiar with the team already. Keenan Allen's up there as well. You got Noah Brown, Jahan Dotson. List goes on and on here. Any of these names here interest you that the Ravens should bring in? Again, 23 million in cap space left. A lot of these guys will be willing to sign on a 1 year vet deal, things like that. So, what are you thinking?
I think the two hottest names right now that I've seen connections or potential discussions, obviously Stephon Diggs. Ever since he was available, I've seen so many people say Stephon Diggs to the Ravens because it's such a Ravens move to get a player like that. Definitely on a vet deal. Another one that I've seen conversations for, which again, this 100% goes to the Rashad Bateman. I don't even what you call them. Haters, disagreeers, what
Yeah, it's the
naysayers,
Bateman Hate
whatever.
Club.
I'd,
Yeah.
I'd say the Bateman head club. I've seen so many of them sit back and say, "Man, we can move off of Bateman and go get Jawan Jennings." So I've heard those two names be the hot commodities. Um, again, I not too hot on these veteran receivers. Not saying that they can't come in and be productive. I think if you had a guy like Stephon Diggs, he would find a way to be productive on a roster like this, for sure. I agree with you with the Tyreek Hill statement. Again, it's they don't play the exact same way, but it's too close to what Zay Flowers does. And based on how they drafted, I don't think Doyle's interested in trying to have two guys with a similar play style. He wants to have a guy that does something different, something specific. He's trying to have different variations because they're going to look to run various of sets and various of plays, which allows them to use certain specialties here. So I think I'm really interested in seeing what this offense is going to be because with the different utilizations of these guys, different types of receivers that you have here from to Bateman to Surratt and Lane, I really think Declan Doyle is going to have a real fun time trying to put an offense together. So I agree with you with Tyreek Hill. I just think they're too close. Not exactly the same, but it's too close to the same archetype that I don't think Declan's going to really look to push that. So me personally, I'm not gonna be mad if they were to get a Stephon Diggs, but
Whoa, you
like
you want Stephon Diggs though? With
I
everything
don't
that
I
Stephon
don't
Diggs
want
has
him.
going on, out of all these names, hell, I'd rather have Tyreek Hill than Stephon Diggs. I'd
In
rather
all
have
honesty, I'd
D
rather have
Hop
D-Hop.
than
Yeah,
Stephon
I'd
Diggs.
rather
I'd
have
rather have
D-Hop. That'd be
Keenan
my
Allen
answer.
than Stephon Diggs, you know?
Yeah,
Like Stephon Diggs, I just think that he's if Stephon Diggs was like the type of receiver who was like that X type of receiver who can just moss you, things like that. If he was like 6'4", right, you can throw a fade ball to him and things like that. I would put up with the antics. I'd say, okay, bring him in, let's give him a shot. But
yeah,
he's not that guy, right?
yeah.
And I am a firm believer that we have Stephon Diggs light at home in Rashad Bateman. Call me crazy, but like, what can Stephon Diggs do that Rashad Bateman we haven't seen him do before?
That's fair.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like he of course he hasn't been as productive over the course
Yeah.
of his season. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm still just talking about like from a skill set perspective, right? I think that kind of similar there. Anyways, but Stephon Diggs to me, there's just too many antics. You got the whole court thing with the allegations, and he's got the live-in private chef who he's having sexual relations with. It's just a mess. And then Cardi B, it's just a mess, bro. I can't deal with that. Not on the first year of Jesse Minter and Declan Doyle. I can only imagine a 29-year-old Declan Doyle having to deal with the personality of a Stephon Diggs. Is Stephon Diggs 30 yet? He should be.
He's close to 30.
He should be like 30, 31, maybe
He
32, something like that. But
definitely
yeah,
looks around 30.
especially if he's older than the offensive coordinator. You think he's going to take lip off of Declan Doyle? Absolutely not. Nah, I'm
That's a fair
good.
point.
I'm good off of Stephon Diggs. But
I
no,
didn't.
if
He's
they did bring
32.
32, yeah, okay, that sounds
He's
about right.
32.
That sounds about right. But um, but no, yeah. I mean, if there's anybody on this list who I would prefer to have, it would be D Hop because he's already familiar with the organization. Lamar Jackson knows what to do with the D Hop. I mean, D Hop literally countless times last year was a chain mover for us, back
Yep.
shoulder guy, timing route guy. Yeah, I would love to have him back. Outside of that, I mean, Keenan Allen, if his hamstrings can hold up, then I'm
Mm,
cool with that as well.
that's a
But
great one.
yeah, but D Hop would definitely be at the top of my list for wide receivers. Let's shift gears here because you also mentioned edge, right? Let me
Yep.
see. You also mentioned edge. So the available edge defenders here, you have Hassan Reddick, you have Joey Bosa, Leonard Floyd, Danico Autry, Eter Gross Matos, Michael Dana, and the list goes on and on and on. Von Miller actually still on the list. Cameron Jordan, a couple of vets down low on that list as well who are ready. Kyle Van Noy is another one who said yesterday who, he wanted to kind of have a reunion with the Ravens. I'm all set on the Kyle Van Noy experience, me personally. But what do you think about these edges here? I know you mentioned Joey Bosa. That's an interesting one because he used to play with Jesse Minter, so you get the continuity
Mm.
there. And I think that would be great. I mean, two vet edges, Joey Bosa and Trey Hendrickson, and then you got the young gunners and the backing them up in Zion Young, Mike Green, Tavius Robinson. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, Joey Bosa would definitely be number one on my list. Um, I gotta say this. I
Okay,
got a lot of love for Kyle Van Noy. We will always appreciate what you did in Baltimore.
for
But
sure.
respectfully, man, we good. We good
Yeah,
over here. We
yeah,
good.
we're all good, bro.
We all good, bro. We all good. Like, thank you so much, but we all good. But yeah, I would definitely say Joey Bosa would definitely be one of the main guys at the top of my list. Cam Jordan is an interesting one as well. I think
Yeah.
I think that definitely be an interesting one as well to bring in. That definitely be a nice veteran piece to pair up right next to, well, alongside Trey Hendrickson as well. Obviously, Clowney we've talked about as well. If they wanted to go back down that route, he did have his best year with us, and he's still productive. He was productive with the Cowboys last year. So, yeah, I think those are definitely a couple names to bring up for the most part. I am
Wait,
interested. I
and you
think they may
mentioned
look.
real quick. You mentioned Clowney. Clowney, you can get him probably way cheaper than a Joey
Yeah,
Bosa as well. So I mean, you can do Clowney, and then you can go shopping for something else too. So no, I like that prospect as well. Yeah.
yeah, Clowney would definitely give you the opportunity to get another piece if you wanted to as well. So that would yeah, I would definitely stick with those looking towards Clowney, Cam Johnson, and Joey Bosa. Those would be the three guys I would look at.
I forgot about. I didn't even see the super chat donation. Appreciate it. Great 174 dropping the two piece in the chat. Says drafting two wide receivers is clearly not ideal for Tez and Bate. Yeah, the conversation we were having just not too long ago. That's what I was saying. I think Bate will get the nod because he's like the vet in the room right along Zay Flowers. But Tez, yeah, he might get pushed down that depth chart a little bit in favor of those young guys.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's not ideal for Tez Walker, but I think Bateman, for the most part, he'd be fine. Obviously, he's going to get the nod, but he's a different type of receiver from Surratt and Lane. So I don't think they'd
Mhm.
really, for the most part, be taken away from what Bateman brings as a guy that's more technical with route running and being able to create separation. Like, he brings a different element, and I think getting those two guys will allow them to really play Bateman a lot more in the slot, which is where he wants to be. It allows you to
Mm,
have Zay Flowers roam everywhere, but you can really allow Bateman to play in the slot, which is where he's his most effective. When he had his best year of his career in 2024, they played him a lot there. Playing him more outside doesn't really work towards what they're using, which is why having guys like Surratt and Lane who can play that outside spot would work for you. So I don't think this would really hurt somebody like Bateman. If anything, this would benefit him and give him more opportunities to be able to cook inside. But for someone like Tez Walker, it's gonna be a tall task. He's got the advantage with experience, but it's gonna be a tough camp because, like you said, he's a stepchild, and these two,
yeah.
that's Declan Doyle's babies, man. So it's gonna be a tough one for Tez.
Yeah. World class says here in the chat, Tez will outshine everybody come training camp. We'll see. I mean, training camp is going to be Man, I can't wait to see who's climbing up and down the food chain in training
Well,
camp, man. That's going to be so interesting. I cannot wait for August. I'm telling you, I cannot wait. But yeah, thank you so much again for your super chat donation, the great ones 74. But back to this edge room talk. I mean, yeah, I think we kind of did it. Jadavian Clowney, I think that now that we've kind of talked through it a little bit, I'm on board for bringing him back in. He has already been vocal about wanting to come back to the Ravens. So it's not just Kyle Van Noy. There's a lot of guys. I mean, people love the Ravens. Guys love the Ravens. They love their experience there.
yep,
They know it's first class. They also know it's a totally new regime, right? And Jadavian Clowney is still productive, even at his big age. You know what I'm saying?
yep.
Just like a guy like Calais Campbell. So it's like I would love to have him back in, another guy who's already familiar with the organization. So yeah, edge defenders is definitely another one. Now looking at centers here, let's take a look at the available centers on the free agent market. So
Oh boy,
oh, yeah, what we
not
have
much.
here, of course, not too much, right? Exactly, not too many options here, but there are some. You have James Daniels, who was previously with the Dolphins, Graham Glasgow, who was previously with the Detroit Lions, Ethan Pochich, previously with the Cleveland Browns, Ryan Bates with the Bears, Sam Mustipher for the Broncos, Andre James with the Chargers, and Zeke Correll from the Minnesota Vikings. Now, one that's been kind of like talked about a lot is Graham Glasgow, the center who previously played with the Detroit Lions. And it's looking like his previous annual value was about 6 million, 6.6 million. So that's another guy. I mean, you pair him, you pick him up, you get a Jadeveon Clowney. I think that nicely weaves together this team wherever it may still be a little bit loose at right now. You make those two moves, keeping it real. I think that this team is pretty much ready to go, locked and loaded. There's nothing else they need to do in this offseason. But centers, where do you think the Ravens should go there? Do you think they should get one of these guys, or should they try to trade? There's been rumors about them trading with the Bears and things like that. What do you think?
I think they will consider Graham to potentially sign him. I think that is something they may consider, but knowing how thin the free agent market is for center, it's a high possibility they just go via trade. I think it's a very strong chance they decide they're going to trade for a center and see what they can get from that. They do have a couple centers here. Obviously, Corey Bullock, who we'll see how he does for the most part. And they did pick up that undrafted center who was teammates with Venga.
Oh,
They
Nick
also
Dawkins.
yeah, Nick Dawkins. So that is somebody they're going to give a try. I really think they're going to lean more towards a trade. If they're going to sign any of these guys, Glasgow's probably going to be the guy they're going to lean towards. Not the strongest of candidates, but that is somebody that they could look towards. But I think it's more than likely that they do end up trading for a center. And then at that point, you get to camp, you have a competition with all these centers, and whoever best fits the criteria that Ledford is looking for, whoever best performs and produces, both in training camp and the preseason, which I feel like we got to talk about that because I think there's a conversation to be made about whether or not we're actually going to see people participate in the preseason because this is now Mentor's era, and I don't know if how he's going to look about it in terms of playing guys in the preseason versus not. But in terms of the center position, 100%. Those guys are playing in the preseason because you've got to see what they do in practice and you've got to see what they do on the field. And the guy that performs the best, whether it's a guy you traded in, one of the undrafted guys, whether Corey beats everybody out, you got to see who's going to perform the best versus practice and in the game, and that person ultimately gets the center spot.
Yeah, that's true. And as you guys can see here, Graham Glasgow, his PFF stats from 2025 here was ranked 33 out of 40 centers in his overall grade there. So definitely not the best grade. He
Yeah.
is a 10-year vet. And you would love to have like some experience there. I mean, at the very least, some experience there at that center position for Lamar
Mhm.
Jackson, who's going to have, kind of like, he's going to have really, really good pieces around him. John Simpson, take him for what you want, right? I still think he's more than serviceable, especially if he can clean up the penalties, which was something that kind of plagued him last time he was with us.
Yeah.
Venga Ioane, I think we all expect him to be, first class interior lineman. Ronnie Stanley, we know what he is, and Roger Rosengarten. While he did regress in his second year, I do expect him to bounce back, especially with better pieces around him. So we'll
Yeah.
see. what ends up happening there. And you bring up a good point with Dwayne Ledford. If you give him what 4 or 5 guys who can kind of have a competition, and you kind of forge those guys and fire whoever comes out of it at the end, yeah, let's play that guy. Let's play that guy. But definitely give us options here. So I don't know if we'll go trade or if we'll go and pick up a guy off the free agency, but let's just get as many different guys as possible. Let's get some young guys. Let's get some guys we acquired earlier in the offseason. Maybe trade for a guy. I don't know. Bring some guys in, bring some competition in, and let's see who walks out from that fire that's forged by Dwayne Ledford in training camp in preseason. Now, that pretty much wraps up our talk about the whatever free agents the Ravens might be bringing in now. Basically, the point of this video, guys, was that the Ravens are not done yet. Right? They still
Mhm.
have plenty of cap space, 23, almost $24 million in cap space to make another move that can weave together the loose ends of this team to make it one, to make it whole, to make it, so to say, without any holes, right? Without any holes. So I want you to do right now in the comments, if you're part of the replay gang on this episode, is comment down below what free agents that we covered, maybe the ones that we didn't talk about. What free agents do you think that the Ravens should bring in order to, again, weave together the loose ends of this team to make it whole, to make it, quote unquote, I guess you could say, perfect. No holes, no things that we need to address, things like that. Cool. Now, you mentioned preseason, and just kind of because to wrap this up here, you mentioned preseason
Mhm.
and what you think Jesse Minter is going to do. I hadn't actually thought about this until you just brought it up. But when I take stock of what he said to Zay Flowers about how, yeah, you guys are still going to get your work in, but under me, it's going to be easier on your bodies. Because like we talked about earlier in the show, John Harbaugh was running those dudes into the ground, right? So I think that you'll probably not see. It'll probably be similar to honestly what Harbaugh did. Like you might see starters for maybe like a possession or two, and certain starters at that.
Mhm.
Lamar will probably be shut down. Henry will probably be shut down. Zay Flowers probably shut down, but outside of that, you might see a Bateman, right, starting in a preseason game. You might see, Nate Wiggins playing a drive or something like that. But what do you think happens in the preseason, and what do you think needs to happen in the preseason?
I'm more of agreement with you. I don't think much is going to change in that aspect of I don't see a lot of the starters really playing in the preseason.
Mm,
I legitimately don't think that's going to be something that Mentor's going to lean towards. However, it all depends on how training camp goes and more so the field because there's an element of the player's opinion on this because if the players feel like they want to go get some reps before the regular season starts, they could go out there. I don't really see a situation where Mentor's going to emphasize that. I think he's going to go with what his players want. So if it's a situation where Lamar and Henry want to do at least a drive or a couple of plays, Mentor could be convinced if that's what they feel they need, he's gonna work with his players there. But I don't think he's gonna come out and say, "All right, guys, we're playing in the preseason." Straight up, I don't think that's gonna be a case. It's more so what we're gonna get out of practice and training camp, how things are going to go as training camp progresses. And if the players feel the need, because there are certain players that sit back and say, I need, preseason to kind of get me going. I could use a couple of reps. Let me just get a little bit of game time action before the regular season starts. So I think this is a situation where Jesse is going to let the players ultimately decide whether or not they want to have some preseason time. If there are players that are like, I'm good, I'm ready for the season no matter what, we can start now, I'll be good. Cool. If it's a player that's like, I need the reps, let me get a couple plays, just get a little bit warmed up just to get that feel
yeah,
before the regular season starts, he will. So I'm with you. I don't think he's going to push for them to play in the preseason, but he will let the players decide whether or not they want those reps. So if one of the main guys wants to do like 2 plays, could happen.
yeah. And I've also said I've been a big proponent in the past of saying I think guys do need to get at least some sort of reps in because going from mini camp, OTAs, and even training camp, and hell, even joint practices, right? It Nothing compares to actually being hit in game, right? Getting
Mhm.
physical in the game, right? Under the lights, things like that. I think that's important. It's important for your body to kind of feel that shock. that shock in competition and things like that, and then just also for your psychology, just for your mental. Like you don't want to go into Sunday now. Not to say that these guys can't do it. We've seen Lamar Jackson not play preseason and then go out there and win MVP. So don't get me wrong. I'm
Yeah,
not saying that needs to happen, but I'm always a fan of maybe just one drive of one game doesn't
mhm,
hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like a couple of plays, right? You give them opportunity to hand it off a couple times and then maybe one throw and that's it. Just give him something to get used to the game speed. Even if he's not getting hit, like actually hit, but just give him something to get used to the game speed. And for people who say like, "Oh no, you don't want to risk it in the preseason." It's like, brother, the NFL is an 18-week season,
yeah,
right? Like what is the point in putting these guys in bubble wrap for the preseason for the entire duration of the preseason just for you to put their bodies through literal hell for the next 18 weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I'm not
yeah.
saying play the guys the whole time, but just one drive, right? It won't kill them. So I think we're kind of like in agreement there. But also, like we said, probably not much will change. Not much will change.
Yeah.
Especially considering the kind of trend is shifting towards more so. And I think Sean McVay really started this just flat out no starters at all ever. Like that's kind of what's been going on. And I think that the status quo in that regard will be upheld. But okay, I think we've talked at length about our Baltimore Ravens. My guy, keeping it real. Again, appreciate you so much for coming through. I just got one more question to ask you before we wrap up here, if that's okay with you. Are we doing good on time?
Yeah, we good.
All right, cool. I got one more question to ask you. It's not Ravens related, but it's sports related. I know you're a basketball fan too, right?
Mhm.
Who do you got winning the finals this year?
I've gone very back and forth with this. I've taken a look at all the teams and how I've assessed them in terms of play, both regular season experience. I have done everything in my power to try to come up with a reason as to why the Oklahoma City Thunder don't win the championship. The best case scenario I have in this aspect has to be San Antonio, who would have to grow fast, and Wemby would be a problem, especially in a matchup against OKC, which again, Wemby has a serious problem with Chet. He does not like that guy. That would be one amazing matchup, and the defense in that series, because both of these teams are great defensive teams, it would be an amazing Western Conference Finals matchup. But other than San Antonio, just taking a look at the field, no other team in a 7 game series could really match up with OKC, especially anyone that's left. When you take a look at the West, they're going up against the Lakers with or without Luca. That's not a team that's going to be able to deal with OKC. They could potentially, because J Dub is out right now, who is their second best player. But even without him, they move like a well-oiled machine. They still find ways to win games. So Lakers don't have a shot in that aspect. And then Minnesota, who again is an interesting aspect there, but you've got your best player in Anthony Edwards, who's dealing with injuries on both his knees and just playing through it, which is crazy in that aspect. And then you lose
Yeah.
one of your pieces in Dante DiVincenzo. It just feels like in a
Mm,
matchup like that, it's tough. And they had faced off against them last year in the conference finals and lost. I don't think anything's changed dramatically between last year's Timberwolves and this year's Timberwolves. It'd be tough. And then when you look out east, I'm not a believer in Cleveland. They have done nothing to prove that to me. And if they lose this playoff series against Detroit, I'm gonna have a real good conversation about Donovan Mitchell, because there hasn't been a difference between Donovan Mitchell in Utah and Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland. He's the same player, and it's been the same result: first and second round exits. So conversations will be made there if Cleveland loses. Detroit, I'm very interested to see how they continue to progress, but in the matchup against OKC, I would have to look at who am I going to trust there other than Cade Cunningham, and Cade can't do it by himself. Tobias at times, that's cool, but that's not going to be enough against OKC
yeah,
when they
no.
got guys that can blitz you. So not Detroit, Cleveland's not to be trusted. Philadelphia right now probably not getting out of that series against New York now that Embiid's been ruled out for game 2 tonight. And then New York is an interesting aspect there. They got the best chance right now to get to the finals, but even in the matchup against OKC, the Knicks do fall short. And a lot of times, from a defensive aspect, the Thunder do have ways to match up very well against what New York does. So yeah, if it's not San Antonio that takes down OKC, the Thunder are repeating.
Yeah, I mean, the one wrench I'll throw in that for you is I think Minnesota could still get it done. I think that they can, man. I mean, because
It's a
against
tough
the
one.
Spurs, they've already stole one at home against the Spurs, right? So like they're already ahead of schedule in terms of beating them. Now, I think that the Spurs definitely won't have atrocious shooting games throughout this entire series like they had in Game One, but with Anthony Edwards just like playing how he is, and then Rudy Gobert being able to kind of match Wimby in a way. I mean he's known Wimby since he was like 13 years old, and I actually didn't know that until the other day. But like very very familiar with him. Doesn't just allow Wimby to come down low in the paint and just get whatever he wants, right? But then also Julius Randle is a guy who is showing up, and his veteran kind of prowess there is really impressing me lately. Like down the stretch of that Game One, he was getting buckets, he was getting stops. Like that guy is good. I think that they have some pieces. I don't know if they'll necessarily beat OKC in a 7-game series, but I think that they could definitely give them a run for their money because right now the Spurs are in trouble, and I think that the stars might be aligning to see Minnesota take on OKC in the Western Conference Finals. In terms of in the East, I mean, I like Detroit. Like you mentioned, outside of Cade, it's like if you cut off Cade Cunningham's water, which is very, very hard to do. He's very, very
Mhm.
hard to guard. He plays at his own pace. You can't speed him up. That's what I love about him. And he has great finishing ability. He can
Yep.
shoot too. But if you kind of employ that sort of like the Jordan rule on him, like where it's like, okay, you can let Cade Cunningham get 36, 40 points, whatever. But everybody else, Tobias Harris, all those other dudes, we're shutting those dudes down. We're shutting them down, right? And yeah, then you could probably kind of smother the Detroit Pistons. But and then in this Knicks in Sixers series, I didn't even know that Embiid was out tonight. That game's actually
Yeah.
going on right now. It's actually
Yeah.
Sixers are up one at halftime, which is interesting. Without Embiid, they're doing way better than they did in Game One. But we'll see what happens there. I mean, I think that the Knicks should win this series.
Mhm.
I think Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Maxey kind of cancel each other out in a way in terms of their scoring. If Karl Anthony Towns is on and he's, really, really cleaning up the boards, offensive rebounds, things like that, it makes them a super tough out against the Sixers, especially without Embiid. So if Embiid's going to be kind of on and off in this series, I got the Knicks winning that. I do have Detroit beating Cleveland. And then I
Mhm.
have, honestly, Detroit versus Knicks. If that ends up how it shakes out, that's a tough one for me. But I'd probably lean Knicks in that one. And then out of the West, I think it'll probably be it's either Minnesota or OKC for me. I think that the Spurs are going to get knocked off. I think that they're a year away. Um, but nah, man, we're shaping up for a damn good playoffs, man. I've been having a lot of fun watching these games so far. So, yeah, it's too bad, so sad that because you're a Heat fan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't make
Unfortunately.
it this year. Not too much popping off for the Miami Heat, unfortunately, right now. But
I'm
hopefully y'all
happy
bounce
about
back.
that. I'm
Yeah.
actually happy about that because missing the playoffs for the first time since what 2018 has actually sat back and allowed them to sit back and be like, okay, we can't rely on this. So we're a playing team because we went to the finals in 23 as a playing team with Jimmy Butler and the crew. So they can't keep relying on. Well, it don't matter if we don't do well in the regular season. We sneak into the playoffs, we're a threat. You can't really use that take anymore. Now you've got to actually make changes. So I'm hopeful this will lead to a summer where they make legitimate changes. But
Yeah.
beside that, I mean, things been going well for me as a Heat fan. I watched Boston blow a 3-1 lead. That was perfect. I was
There you go.
perfect. I
Yeah.
really should have hit up Raven C after that. I really should have hit up my man's on that because he's a Celtics fan. I really should have asked him how he's feeling after watching the first ever 3-1 blown lead in franchise history for the Celtics. So that was
Mm,
cool. And then Orlando blowing the 3-1 lead. That was just gravy because all of a sudden little brother is talking to big brother. They haven't won a championship or done anything, but because they keep beating us in the regular season, all of a sudden they're better than us. But that's beside the point. First round went exactly how I wanted it to in terms of being a Heat fan and just hate watching some of this. So the playoffs going to good. All I need is for the Knicks, which I believe they'll most likely get to the finals if they play up to their potential. The Knicks choke again works for me. If the Cavs lose for one person and one person only, Max Struess. I didn't forget what you did in that finals, buddy. You didn't show up. You didn't do anything in the 23 finals. Jimmy and Bam were dying out there, and you couldn't hit an open three to save your life. Don't think I'm not watching what you're doing in this Cleveland series, bro. Y'all lose against Detroit. Forget about Donovan Mitchell. I'm coming after you. But yeah, it's been a fun playoff so far, and I'm just enjoying not having to deal with the stress of my team being a playing team and having to deal with that again. So yeah, I'm excited to see where things are going to go moving forward.
Yeah, same here, man. It's been a hell of a playoffs, man, and it's not. It feels like it's just getting started, to be honest with you. And the NBA playoffs
Yeah,
last for so long, but it gives you something to do. And it's like after that, I'm just waiting for football. I'm just waiting for football after that. But listen,
yeah.
man, I appreciate you for coming through to this episode of Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. Listen, let's clap it up for my guy keeping it real, coming in here and keeping it real with us for an hour and 10 minutes here on Quiet Storm Sports. Appreciate you so much for coming through. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then also, please, please, please go subscribe to Keeping It Real's YouTube channel. Keeping It Real, my brother, thank you again for coming through. And where can we find you? What you got going on content-wise?
You guys can find me on my YouTube channel, Keeping It Real. We are preparing for this season. And since it's a new season with a new era of Ravens football, we got some new ideas here. So, currently in the process of putting that together, but it's a new era of Ravens football. So, we're going to be mixing things up on the channel here. Some new ideas, some new content that we haven't tried before. It's the Jesse Minter era. So, we got to switch it up. Some new things coming on the channel soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I mean, you're right. Like the Ravens, they have done a lot, of course, new head coach and new star players and new uniforms and things like that. I mean, all the things, right? I mean, us as content creators, we got to turn the page too, and we got to do things different. So I like that you said that. And, I definitely got some ideas here too for the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. And I hope that you can come back on and join us here soon. Maybe before the season starts, things like that. We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch. Does that sound
Oh yeah,
good to you?
anytime. You guys
Okay,
know
sounds good.
this is my favorite place to come and watch. I ain't missed an episode yet.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, man. It's been way too long since we talked, so I'm glad we had this discussion, and we'll definitely have more in the future. Again, keeping it real, everybody. Clap it up for him. This has been another episode of Quiet Storm Sports on the Purple Rain Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate each and every one of y'all coming through. Before you get out of here, please leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new and you enjoyed the content you just consumed. If you're part of the hashtag replay gang, make sure you leave a comment down below with any comments, questions, concerns, whatever you got. But listen, guys, until next time, you know what we always say: stay positive, test negative, and never, ever, ever forget, even on the rainiest of days, to call God. It's been another episode of Quiet Storm Sports. My name is Sudden Death, your host. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.